Okay, hello? Hello.
Closer, maybe.
Closer, okay.
There you go.
I'm Mike Dilger. I work on the Gossip client. This is a talk that's titled The Gossip Model, but I want to change that to Relay Rendezvous because I think that explains better what we're talking about. Because the Gossip model, the Gossip was the name of a client. There are a couple ways of doing Relay Rendezvous: inbox model, outbox model. I think we'll use those terms. So we'll drop the whole idea of Gossip model and we'll talk about those instead. And I think Relay Rendezvous explains better what we're trying to talk about. So if you think about Nostr, it's notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. So what happens is a client puts an event on a relay, and it puts it there for a purpose. You don't just go to a relay to put an event to have it languish. The point is that someone eventually is going to go to that relay, and they're going to pull that event down to benefit from it. So we have a question of which relay for what purpose. So I've encountered some 300 relays in Nostr, and if you just put your event on some relay and you're hoping someone else finds it, it's not going to work terribly well if they're not actually using the same relay. So there's a couple models you could have. One of them is called an inbox model, and it's very much like email. So with email, you would subscribe to, for example, a newsletter, and someone would then, who publishes the newsletter, would send to your email the newsletter, say every week. And so this is where the creator of the event is putting it on the relay. They're putting it on a relay that's destined for a particular person. There's another model called Outbox, which is more like a website where it's not destined for anybody in particular, it's for anybody. So the first use of Nostr that I was involved in, and I think for a lot of people, is something like a Twitter clone, something like microblogging. And in that sense, if I want to publish something for people to see, they need to know which relay I published that at. If they follow me, they're not going to be able to find it. If I published it to a relay in Finland and someone else is using a relay in Germany, the relays don't talk to each other. They're not actually relaying between each other. So there needs to be some way for people, if they want to follow my content, to know, hey, I'm posting to this relay in Finland. So there's a NIP65, and it basically says this is a way that you can tell people what relays you're using for what purpose. And the couple purposes that we started out with were Outbox, to say this is where I publish my stuff, come here if you want to get it. And the other one would be Inbox, to say if you want me to read something, put it in my inbox, because I'll be watching for things that tag me in that. I want to apologize that I didn't know Pablo was going to be on so many panels. But you guys anything you want to say before we go into more stuff? Or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so there's I think the theme that I want to talk about on this talk is just, there's actually many different ways to store notes and retrieve notes from relays, and it really depends on the use case. So when I first made my client, I think what it is, I looked at some code from Fiat Jaff, and he had this concept called a relay pool. And it's like the dumbest possible thing you can do on Nostr, but it's actually if you're just starting out, it's fine. It gives you a good idea of a very simple way to push and retrieve notes, which is you simply you have an array of relays, just a set of relays that you want to publish to, and then you can write a small piece of code that just pushes those notes to those relays. Now, I'm not even at this point even thinking about the entire how this is going to be good for decentralization or anything like that. It was just a simple way to get started when you're developing. And this is kind of how I started with Damus, and I still have this model in Damus. It doesn't mean it's the best way for decentralization. There's a lot of issues with it, like you just mentioned. But for the purposes of if you're just trying to build a social media network, you can just put those relays on your profile, and then people can read your profile, assuming they can get that to begin with, and then they can access the notes, and you have censorship resistance. So I find this the simplest model to get started on Nostr if you want to play with that idea. But there's lots of other Gossip is another, the the I guess it's considered outbox model. But something I want to talk about is there's actually other ways to fetch and retrieve data and different models altogether that no one's even really talking about right now. So something that I want to do is build asynchronous communication on Nostr. So like email. Like I don't want to use email anymore. I want to, I just want to use Nostr for everything. So one thing I was thinking of is imagine if you're running a mailing list and you have a relay which represents the mailing list. So if people want to send notes to that relay, then that's kind of like, so that could be, the relay itself could be considered the mailing list itself. The only issue with that is that if people just add that to the relay pool, if they're using a model like the Damas's model, then you're just getting a bunch of random messages from random people. And so this is why like community-based relays or those are like very special purpose relays are not really effective because people just blast notes to them. So to fix this problem, I've been thinking about how to solve this. And one thing I want to do is add like to and CC and different types of metadata on notes, so that if your mailing list relay receives a note, it actually makes sure that it's intended to be sent to that particular relay. So I think overall, there's many different things, there's many different ways to send and receive notes on Nostr, and I think the theme I want to get across is there's not like one best way to do it. So maybe the gossip model, I guess I'm not supposed to say the gossip model, but maybe that's best for decentralization in a social media setting. But maybe if I want to build other types of protocols like email or synchronous communications or mailing lists, there might be a different way to send and receive notes. So I think we're just beginning to explore different ways to do this. Anyway, so that was just my perspective.
And so I wanted to say that these different models are basically, you have to think about what your problem is and what problem you're solving, and then figure out what model is going to solve that properly. The microblogging thing, I thought Outbox solved it really well, and then I was surprised to find out ActivityPub does it exactly the opposite way. It does microblogging with an inbox model. It also sort of works. It has different properties. With an inbox model, the person sending, that federates to another ActivityPub server can cut it off and not continue to feed that information. So it's not really like publishing an RSS feed where anybody can come get it. And then there's other models, like a chat server model or a live event where you go to a relay, everybody has to rendezvous together to the same relay for that. So, and there may be more models that we're not thinking of.
Yeah, that's why Fiat Chef wrote maybe a couple of weeks ago or a month ago that it would be interesting to document, to spec how this stuff should work. And I was vehemently opposed to that idea because I think we're beginning to explore this and we have no idea what works. And I fully agree that I think this will work in different ways depending on what you're trying to do. What are you guys' thoughts on with regards to topical reads? Because what you're saying with like the CC and the BCC to the relay, that doesn't prevent like a client from saying CCC, and I'm going to CC all the relays, and I'm going to do pool, but I'm just going to CC everything.
Yeah, but at that point, like that, you're building that client to be kind of annoying and malicious. So then you're basically building a spamming thing, right? But the default state is, if we want to start building clients that that use like this new email type rendezvous protocol, then I assume it's not going to just CC everyone. Like that's not the whole point. Like the whole point of adding the metadata is that you want the message to get to a specific location. And this is actually getting away from. But when you start doing these things, it's becoming less censorship resistant because you're no longer blasting it to end relays. You're blasting it to a specific relay, and then you can be censored. So I think one thing that I think to change people's thinking on this is that it's actually okay to have censored models, right? Like everyone's so focused. I know Avider talks about this a lot, where his moderated community, he really wants it to work across many different relays, so it's censorship resistant, and that's okay. But I think it's completely okay to use the protocol in a completely, in ways that can be easily censored. You really want to be, if you have a relay within your company, you want to be able to make sure it only has notes from your employees. Like, yeah, you're technically censoring everyone. And so maybe I think that's people should be like changing their thinking. Like there's going to be other types of models where it's not going to be completely decentralized. You don't need to design the protocol so that you have to have it sent to 6 different relays. It's completely okay to send it to a specific relay. We just need better ways to communicate that on the note so that you don't just get random notes on your specific relay.
Yeah, there the way I think about censorship resistance is we need censorship resistance for a few things. Censorship resistance is very expensive, and the more censorship resistance you want to be, the more expensive it is in terms of the structure and the architecture of the protocol. What we actually want is, like, censorship resistance is a means to an end. And I think the end is the permissionless innovation. And I think we can have the permissionless stuff, and for some stuff, like what you're explaining, is we can have like localized censorship at the relay level. And if you are engaging in a community, you can be censored. And if you're censored and you don't want to participate in that community, you can go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, and I think if we're talking about communities like this, there's different ways to do it, right? Vitor has his way of doing it. It's more censorship resistance. There's a focus on have a community-based relay. This relay is about this particular community, and I think we're going to do it all the ways, right? We're going to do it all the ways, and then we're going to, it's going to be like the marketplace of ideas, and some of those will end up working out better than others, and we'll just find out, because from where we sit now, we have a lot of exploring to do.
Yeah, totally. And to complete that previous thought, that's why I like NIP65, because even when you're getting to the model where you're part of a community, a relay-based community, and you're getting censored by that relay, the people participating in the discussion can opt to go and fetch your node somewhere else if you're getting censored by that community. So you can get expelled by the community leader or whatever, but people can opt into still going and fetching your node from somewhere else. So it's like a fork of the community.
Right, right.
All right, what else do we want to say?
Do you guys think that, with regards to topical relays, do you guys think that relays should have a way to defend themselves from the content that comes in? Like, can that scale? Can that work?
Yeah, I mean, unless
I'm
you...
not
sure what you mean. Do you mean like some sort of content moderation for the
yes?
The
say for example,
or?
I want to run like the usual example I use is I want to run a philosophical relay, and I only want discussion for philosophy, because what I want is I want to be able to go to global and be not like airdrops. I want to only be philosophical discussion. So if you think of say, for example, I create philosophyrelay.com, and people add it to Damus, to Primal, to Gossip, and they start talking about football. It's also going to publish to the philosophy relay. And I can whitelist that pub key saying, oh yeah, this guy speaks 25% of the time he speaks about philosophy, but I'm still getting all the other 75% of the stuff. So you need to inspect each individual node. Do you guys think that could work, that there's a model that, yeah?
Well, it all comes back, for me, it always comes back to you need to mark something on the node, like in the content, that says this is for philosophy. So whether it's like he's explicitly sending it to the philosophy relay using the to idea, or maybe there's a way to mark it topics, like maybe not hashtag. Well, yeah, you could use a hashtag.
But
maybe
it
the relay
overlaps with hashtags, right? It
Yeah.
overlaps with, these all kind of overlap. None of these ideas are completely disjoint.
Yeah, so like the relay could just reject everything that doesn't have the philosophy hashtag, or maybe it whitelist pub keys that have from accounts that are all philosophy based. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but
I think the Nostr.wine people they tried like a topical relay based on hashtags, and it didn't work.
Yeah, so the biggest issue with hashtags is that people just spam the shit out of them. So, one thing I was thinking about adding to Damus, I don't know if we're going off track now, but now we're talking about hashtags, is it would be a simple thing where it's like maybe the first hashtag on the note is the one that's counted as the topic, so you can't just spam.
Sorry, I'm just
things.
shamelessly shilling my own project. I had a talk earlier where I was doing some metadata stuff with something called info triples. So I'm working on solving exactly that. So yeah, that's just to be a little bit on conference
Nice.
All right.
No, yeah, we definitely need all the ideas that, because I think this idea of like communities, topics, and how to implement them should they be community based? Should they be moderated communities? These are all ideas that I feel like we're still kind of we're figuring out right now. But I think, yeah, like what Mike said, I think we're going to try all the things, and we're going to see which ones work the best for which types of communities. So.
With your model, I really like that email sort of idea. Like, what about just if relays have an identity, like an npub?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's like you want. I don't know. Like most of the time, you specifically want to send it to a specific location, right? So just having that, it is good to have the identity, but you still want the note to get to a certain place. So that's why I was thinking, you would want the relay in the node itself.
I would think the relays having an identity and talking to the identity or referencing the identity instead of the URL is more of an indirection. Mm-hmm. So it's to say, I'm sending this to this pub key relay, and then there's some sort of a mapping to say, well, that's currently at this DNS, but since we don't control DNS, that might change. You may remap it, but it's still the same pub key. So you sort of have an identity to the relay that can move different DNS addresses.
Yeah, that's what I like.
I just heard about this yesterday.
Yeah. So we were talking about this yesterday because I was thinking about hints and what happens in 10 years when the URLs are all wrapped. And if you have pub keys, right, you can move them a little bit more. It's like you can more easily switch and keep the all hints, whereas URLs are harder to control.
Right, because I don't think you do much of the hinting or work with the hinting much in Damus, right? Because
I have fixed relays. I don't want to pull from random relays. So.
Right, and they're going to be
what do you mean by that?
Over time, anyways, right?
So I mean, well, back in the early days of Damus, we didn't do any signature verification. So if we used the Gossip model, it would just be a disaster because people could just send you. But now we actually do check signature and everything. But that was one of the big reasons. But also, early in the days, people would build like these horribly buggy relays that would just completely break Damus. And some of them were malicious. And I don't think Damus is really hardened against those relays yet. So if you wanted to be malicious, you could put something in your profile that says read from these relays, and you can like break user experience. So.
Right. So I was thinking about that. And I think of it like, here's an example of how I think of it. If I go to a website, and then that website tells my browser, load this font from Google Fonts. And then my browser, now it goes over to Google, and now Google knows what website I was at and when I was at that website, and I don't want Google to know these things. And so I put this thing called uBlock Origin in my browser, basically, and I can control exactly what resources the page is allowed to load. I know that it's trying to load a font from Google. I don't care if the font looks exactly like the web designer intended. I just don't want Google to know where I'm at all the time, so I block that, right? So web clients do this all the time, where they're automatically just loading things that you did not tell it what to load. I don't think we should repeat that. I think we should have smarter clients where we can, in our client, we can still use an outbox model, but say, give the user control of whitelisting to say, am I going to pull from that, or blacklisting to say, hey, I just happen to know this relay is playing tricks. We're not going to go there. I don't care if somebody's outbox relay is listed there. We're not going to use it.
Yeah, I was planning to move to a more decentralized model and like be more open to like fetching from random relays. And I was thinking about some ways to like blacklist. So there's like certain tests you can do if you notice that the relay is misbehaving. Maybe you could like code that within your client to like, oh, it's detecting something bad's happening, and just automatically blacklist it. So there's techniques like that you can use.
Yeah, when I implemented the outbox model on NDK, in the same commit, I had blacklisting because yeah, it's absolutely fundamental. Yeah, 100%. But with regards to the breaking of the like the Damus experience, you would still need to handle evil relays, even if because a user could be tricked into adding up an evil relay, right? Like you could go to, I don't know, someone's profile and you see the relays listed, and okay, it's not automatic, but you add.
Yeah, but I always my reasoning was that that's always going to be a user decision versus a computer decision.
Right.
Also, the limit of how evil a relay can be is there's not a lot that a relay can do. All it can do is to send you an event. The event's only got certain fields in it. They're very simple strings, essentially. And is it signed? Did the verification work or not? It's not. I don't think there's much attack surface from a relay. Not that I can imagine at the moment.
Yeah, so like I know there's some things I just haven't really hardened in Damus. Like so, for instance, you could have a relay that returns advertising or even impersonation. I mean, we do have Web of Trust stuff in there that you can see, but you can get it can be kind of weird sometimes. So I feel like I just need to harden Damus before I feel comfortable.
Do you check on Damus for the results from the relays? Like you query for this pub key and it returns from some other pub key?
Yeah, so there's like things like that. It's like I don't have really hard checks on it. So I basically just like accept. I do on some things that are like, but not always. So
right. That makes sense.
Yeah, so because like again, this was like a really. I think Damus is like one of the oldest Nostr clients, so it's kind of quirky, but I'm slowly gonna try. I'm trying to fix all that, and then in NostrDB, my plan with NostrDB is to be like a native NDK, so I can start building some of that logic into that, and I can reuse that logic between Damus Android and things. So.
I started into this outbox model thing because when I started writing my client in November last year, about a year ago, I thought, well, I want to follow these various people. I don't know where their notes are. How do I find out? And it wasn't obvious. In some ways I could, because Astral and Damus were sharing relay lists in the contents of kind 3, so I could just peek it. I mean, you were using it to configure your own client, but I could just peek at it and say, oh, that's where they're putting their stuff. That's where I'll get those notes to follow them. There were also, recommended relay URL hints you could look at sometimes. I suggested people put relays in NIP5 and FiatJof. That was actually, I think, my first contribution to the NIPs, and FiatJof accepted that one so that you could list your relays there as well. It's different ways to find where people are putting their things. And then, so I didn't know, because that was one of the first things I tried to do, is I just assumed this is how people must be doing it. I hadn't even looked at the other clients and realized, oh, they're just sort of just picking relays as relay pools. So.
Yeah, in the case of Damus, it's like I was just trying to build, a proof of concept of a decentralized social network, and having like a handful of relays that were all owned by different people, that was good enough for me. Like I was like, you just send to those relays, you retrieve from those relays. Obviously, if you're looking at like a larger, more decentralized as a whole, like on a long-term scale, that's not going to work. Which is why Damus will probably move to a more outbox model, or whatever it's called these days. But it works, and it works pretty well. And like now we have stir-fry relays, which are insanely fast. So it's one of those things I keep like, oh well, I'm procrastinating on. I still need to get to, but yeah, it's important.
Yeah, it's work that it's hard to do because it like technically hard to do. It's very ambiguous and it's not shiny at all. Like people will not even notice that you're doing. You could argue it worsens the performance of the application.
Yeah, and you were saying that you were running into lots of bugs when you were in your implementation. It's not a simple implementation.
Yeah, no, I had a bug in there for almost a year that was I thought 7 relays covered the 150 people I followed, and it turned out no, it's actually 15 relays. That the client was actually assigning pub keys to relays where there was a database connection, but the score of that assignment was really low, possibly even 0, and so it should have never made that assignment. Yeah, no, it could be tricky if you want to optimize it in the sense of you want to say, I want to connect to as few relays as possible to cover everybody that I follow at least twice for redundancy, and that the association between the relay and the person is high. Like that's an outbox that they specified, or for some other reason I know that that's where they always post. And then to compute that set, there's different ways to try to think about that algorithm. I came up with something just sort of ad hoc by creating some scores and then sorting it and trying to pick the best score to pick the relay. And then once I pick the relay, then go through all the pub keys that could work there and try to assign as many as possible, and then just iterate through that until I had picked enough relays that everybody was covered. Maybe not the smartest algorithm, but it was fairly straightforward to think about and write. So.
I think my favorite thing about this model, and it's like the main reason I want to implement it, is that like people can just run their own relay. Like they can have a relay in their house, and if it's publicly addressable, then and it's actually useful. It's not just there for a backup, right?
That's the thing. To me, the fact right now we don't have a very persuasive argument to run a relay. It's like the only persuasive argument of running a personal relay is a backup, and it's not really good enough of an argument. It's not persuasive enough. But if people were to, because if a lot of clients were doing this model and all events that are tagging you are written to your relay, then the backup, even as a backup, is much more complete, right? Like you don't only have the stuff that you write, you also have the stuff that addresses you. So it's much more persuasive.
Yeah, yeah.
The other reason I think this is interesting is because I've been thinking a bit about the privacy concerns of relays, because sure, everything in Nostr is public, but almost everything. The requests that you send to a relay are only specific to that relay. So right now, all clients basically query for everything that you want to all the relays you're connected to. So all relays you're connected to, they can see exactly what you're doing and what stuff you're requesting. So if you go to someone's profile and you're scrolling, the relay can tell that you are, okay, every morning you're checking on this, on this person's profile, you're stalking this person, right? I think the gossip protocol can also help, the Outbox model can also help with, okay, I'm going to send some request to this relay. Like, I know that these 3 relays are very similar in terms of the events that they carry. So I'm going to paginate, but not on all the relays at the same time. Like, not everything on all the relays. I'm going to send some here, some here, some here. And it's a little bit harder to get a map of what you're doing.
Yeah, the whole thing becomes more distributed, right? And so that's good for scalability because you can spread out. And one of the thing I had forgot a second ago was that there's a difference between being able to scale and being able to pull out of some central thing that has become censorship in whatever it is, and actually just scaling, unnecessarily, right? It could well be that 50 relays is all we ever need. We don't know. I mean, 50 relays sounds like a lot of competition to me, but you need to have the ability to always say, no, I don't like any of them. I want my own. I want to add a different one. So you have to have that freedom to do it. It's not necessarily that we have to all have our own personal relays, but some people will.
I think for 50 relays to work, unless Nostr dies, or unless Nostr becomes like this niche thing that only 10,000 or 100,000 people use, 50 relays, it would hinge on whether there's a business model to relays. Because I think 50 relays, if you have 1 billion users...
I was just pulling that number out of my ass. I don't know how many relays we need. I mean...
No, but it opens up an interesting question, because I think relays is the one part that the economical aspect of running a relay is still largely not figured out. And we don't know. Like, we are in a pre-embryonic phase of Nostr where this very, very important question is still not figured out. And because might be that 50 is a real number, but that means that we have, like, 50 is...
So we have a lot more than that now, actually.
Yeah. Melvin Carvalho's has been talking about relays and sustainability and stuff like that, and I'm going to trust what he's saying. I have not looked at this number, so trust, don't verify. But he mentioned that the relay numbers is going down. To me, that would make sense, because right now, why would you run a relay? Like, okay, as backup, whatever. But yeah, running like, you can run professional relays like Nostr Wine and Eden, and I don't know if that was like how much you're... It's a big relay, but I don't know how much you invest in...
It's like $300 a month or something.
Okay, yeah, that's not much. But if Nostr grows 100x, that's...
Yeah, Wiz just hooked me up with like a bunch of servers that are like worth a lot of money. So we have lots of... there's going to be some big relays that are going to be running soon, so... But this gave me, you guys were talking about like the outbox model. It got me thinking, like, how could I combine that with my idea with the asynchronous model with email? And I realized it's like those are very compatible ideas. So imagine if I knew that those are your write relays, like those are the ones that you read from. Then what if I just specifically, then my client, if I have an email client, I put the 2 and I get those relays, I put them in the 2 in the CC and just include that on the note. And that's just another way to like let the relays know, like, this is where this note is intended for. That might be really interesting, actually.
Yeah. We haven't talked about DM relays, right? Because and Vitor had even more. I mean, I think he's listed like 4 others that some of them were provisionally through, like an archive relay. Maybe you don't have to tell people where you archive things, but it might be that some relays you want to use as an inbox, but some relays are, in particular, they're better because they only accept events and they don't transmit them back out. And so you want all your DMs to go into that one so that people can't get copies of your DM. Even though they can't decrypt it, you still don't want them to have a copy if you can. So we may have additional types of relay rendezvous usages or whatever.
Yeah, one thing that I've been interested in, and we don't have a way of handling this, is kind-specific relays. I run the Purple Pages one that only serves kind 0 and 10,002, the NIP65 kind, and people use that relay and they're constantly trying to publish kind ones because it's on the relay list, so the client's going to send it there, and it's always going to reject it.
This was actually one of the main reasons I haven't added that yet to Damus, was because I needed to add some code that's like only profile updates get sent there. And that's extra code I have to write, but so that made me realize it's like in my relay list, I need to have metadata that's like, okay, this is a profile relay, only send profile kinds there. So all that needs to be added, but
yeah, we need to spec that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have NIP 11 that says, what NIPs that relay does, but some of these things aren't NIPs, right?
That's the thing, right? This is not a NIP, this is a kind. Yeah.
Right.
Like there is no way for I don't accept kind one.
And clients need to get, and including my client, need to get a lot better in terms of when people pick relays for themselves. It needs to actually match with what that relay is intended to do or is designed to do, right? I'm going to set up this relay as an outbox. I'm going to set up Purple Pages as my outbox. It's not going to work because it's not going to accept my things, right? So there needs to be some way that if we get this spec'd in the protocol, then the client can say, well, here are relays that advertise as being good for outboxes. These are relays that are saying they will work good as inboxes. These are ones that are designed to be DMs. These are ones that are designed for advertising, which is what Purple Pages is, advertising and discovery.
Maybe we could be using command results. So I added command results to Nostr because before, if you wrote a note to a relay, it just like didn't tell you if it was written or not. So a lot of time you just like, things would just go in the void. So command results was this idea where it's like it would send a response code. It's like, oh yeah, successfully written. But if it wasn't successfully written, it actually, you can put a little error message in the event. So maybe you could use that if it's like, oh, only kind X accepted, and maybe you could receive hints from command results to like automatically configure relays. That might be an interesting thing to do. But
Okay.
all right.
Okay, well,
Should we just stop here or do questions or be done? Yeah, if there are any questions, you can take a couple. Questions?
Questions, G?
Shout them out loud so that people can hear. Not yet, I'm thinking.
All right, well, thank you.
Yep, great, thanks.